The story most Americans were told about the Cold War was a simple one. It was a grand struggle of good versus evil, a righteous battle between freedom and tyranny. On one side stood the United States, a beacon of democracy and liberty. On the other was the Soviet Union, an evil empire bent on global domination through communism. This was the public narrative, a tale of brave soldiers, brilliant diplomats, and a nation united against a common foe. It was a story told in classrooms, broadcast on television, and reinforced by presidents. It was a story of containment, of holding the line against the red tide, and it was a story that made sense to millions of people living under the shadow of the atomic bomb. But this public story was only half the truth. Beneath the surface of this ideological conflict, another war was being fought. This war was not waged with armies marching across borders or with grand declarations from world leaders. It was a war fought in the shadows, a secret war of whispers, plots, and deception. It was a war conducted by spies and secret agents, a dirty, often illegal conflict where the lines between right and wrong became hopelessly blurred. The United States, the self-proclaimed champion of democracy, engaged in actions that were profoundly undemocratic. It became a global power, willing to break any rule to win, all while telling its own people a much cleaner, simpler story. The driving force behind this secret war was fear. An all-consuming, paranoid fear of communism permeated every level of the American government. Officials genuinely believed that the Soviet Union was a monolithic threat, that its agents were hiding around every corner, and that any country leaning left was another domino about to fall. This fear created a national security state, where secrecy was not just a tool but a guiding principle. It fostered an environment where the ends were seen to justify any means, no matter how brutal or unethical. The belief was simple: to defeat an enemy that played by no rules, America couldn't afford to play by them either. This logic led the nation down a dark path. The fear of communism was used to justify actions that directly contradicted the very values America claimed to be defending. Freedom of choice for other nations was secondary to American interests. The rule of law was frequently ignored in the name of national security. Leaders believed that protecting the country required a level of secrecy that shielded their actions from public scrutiny, from congressional oversight, and sometimes even from the president himself. This created a powerful, unaccountable machine for covert action, an instrument that would soon reshape the world in ways its creators never fully intended. At the heart of this secret war was the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. It was created in 1947 with a seemingly straightforward mission to collect and analyze intelligence to prevent another surprise attack like Pearl Harbor. Its official purpose was to inform the president, to be his eyes and ears around the world. But very quickly, its role expanded far beyond simple information gathering. President Truman and his successors wanted more than just reports. They wanted a weapon, an instrument that could secretly influence world events, fight communism, and advance American power without leaving any fingerprints. The CIA became that weapon. The agency, known internally as the company, evolved into the president's secret army. Its charter contained a vague but powerful clause allowing it to perform other functions and duties related to intelligence affecting the national security. This phrase became a blank check for covert action. The CIA was tasked with doing the dirty work that the State Department and the military could not or would not do publicly. It was given the power to media group footage of coup d'etat, military vehicles in foreign cities, stock, distribute equally, topple governments, to manipulate foreign elections, to spread propaganda, to arm rebels, and to eliminate enemies. It operated with enormous budgets, hidden from public view, and with a mandate to achieve results by any means necessary. This transformation created an organization with immense power but little accountability. The CIA's directors reported to the president, but their operations were so secret that even many in the White House were kept in the dark. Congress, which was supposed to oversee the executive branch, knew almost nothing of the agency's covert side. This lack of oversight allowed the CIA to become a rogue force at times, pursuing its own agenda in the name of fighting communism. It attracted men who were daring, ruthless, and convinced of their own righteousness. They saw themselves as patriots on the front lines, making the tough choices that kept America safe, even if those choices were illegal or immoral. The culture of the CIA was built on secrecy and plausible deniability. The goal was to ensure that if an operation went wrong, the White House could credibly deny any involvement. This meant creating complex webs of deception using media group, anonymous office buildings, foreign operatives exchanging briefcases, aus stock, wa distribute sucks equally, front companies, foreign agents, and cutouts to hide the hand of the US government. While this protected American presidents from political fallout, it also created a system where catastrophic failures could be swept under the rug, and lessons were rarely learned. The CIA became an agency that could shape history, but it often did so with a blindness to the long-term consequences of its actions, leaving a legacy of chaos and resentment in its wake. Armed with its secret mandate, the CIA began to actively interfere in the affairs of sovereign nations. Two of the earliest and most consequential examples were in Iran and Guatemala. In 1953, the CIA orchestrated a coup in Iran to overthrow the democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. His crime was not being a communist, but nationalizing the British-owned Anglo-Iranian oil company. Fearing the loss of oil and the potential for Soviet influence, the US and Britain decided he had to go. CIA agents bribed politicians, spread vicious propaganda, and staged violent riots, ultimately restoring the dictatorial Shah to power. This single act planted the seeds of anti-American hatred that would explode decades later. Just 1 year later, in 1954, the CIA repeated this strategy in Guatemala. The democratically elected president, Jacobo Arbenz, had initiated land reforms that threatened the vast holdings of the powerful American-owned United Fruit Company. Portraying Arbenz as a dangerous communist puppet, the CIA armed and trained a small rebel force, ran a psychological warfare campaign with a secret radio station, and used bomber planes to intimidate the government. Arbenz was forced to resign, and a brutal military dictatorship took his place, leading to a 40-year civil war that killed hundreds of thousands of people. In both Iran and Guatemala, America chose corporate interests over democracy. The agency's dark operations went beyond overthrowing governments. The CIA also drew up plans to assassinate foreign leaders who were deemed hostile to American interests. The most famous target was Cuba's Fidel Castro. Following his communist revolution, the CIA launched dozens of plots to kill him. These schemes, confirmed by declassified documents, ranged from the bizarre to the deadly. They included everything from exploding cigars and poisoned wetsuits to hiring mafia hitmen to do the job. While none of these attempts succeeded, they demonstrated a willingness at the highest levels of the US government to commit murder as a tool of foreign policy. Perhaps the most disturbing of all the CIA's secret programs was MK-Ultra. This was a top-secret, illegal human experimentation project designed to master the art of mind control. From the 1950s to the 1970s, the agency conducted hundreds of experiments, often on unwitting American and Canadian citizens. They used hypnosis, psychological torture, sensory deprivation, and powerful drugs like LSD to see if they could break down the human mind and control a person's behavior. These experiments were conducted in hospitals, prisons, and universities, sometimes resulting in permanent psychological damage and even death. MK-Ultra represented the ultimate abuse of power, a government secretly torturing its own citizens in the name of national security. The Cold War was often described as a long, twilight struggle, but for millions of people, it was a very real and bloody conflict. To avoid a direct nuclear confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, the superpowers fought their wars by proxy, They used smaller nations as battlegrounds, funneling weapons, money, and advisors to opposing sides in civil wars across the globe. Countries like Korea, Vietnam, Angola, and Afghanistan became arenas for this deadly game. The United States justified its involvement as stopping the spread of communism, but the human cost was staggering. Entire generations were lost, economies were shattered, and societies were torn apart by wars fueled from afar. In Vietnam, American leaders consistently misled the public to maintain support for a brutal and unwinnable war. They fabricated events like the Gulf of Tonkin incident to justify escalation, and painted a rosy picture of progress while the reality on the ground was a bloody stalemate. The war killed over 58,000 Americans and an estimated 2 million Vietnamese civilians. In Afghanistan in the 1980s, the CIA ran one of its largest covert operations ever, arming and funding the Mujahideen rebels to fight the invading Soviet army. While this helped bankrupt the Soviet Union and end the Cold War, it had disastrous unintended consequences. This policy is a textbook example of blowback. Blowback is the term for the unintended, negative consequences of a secret operation that come back to harm the country that sponsored it. The CIA's support for the Mujahideen is the most famous case. By funneling billions of dollars in advanced weaponry to radical Islamist fighters, the United States helped create a generation of trained, battle-hardened militants. After the Soviets left, these fighters did not simply go home. They used their skills, weapons, and radical ideology to form new groups, including Al-Qaeda. The very warriors America had armed to fight one enemy turned their sights on America itself, culminating in the horrific attacks of September 11, 2001. The short-term victory in Afghanistan led to a long-term global catastrophe. This pattern of blowback has been repeated throughout the history of American covert action. The coup in Iran led to the 1979 Islamic Revolution and the hostage crisis. The overthrow of democracy in Guatemala led to decades of instability and mass migration. The arming of anti-communist Contra rebels in Nicaragua in the 1980s, funded through illegal arms sales to Iran, led to a major political scandal that shook the Reagan administration. Time and again, secret operations designed to solve one problem created new, often worse, problems down the road. The legacy of these actions is a world filled with distrust of the United States and regions plagued by the perpetual violence that America helped to ignite. Were these dark actions necessary? Defenders of the CIA's covert operations argue that they were an unfortunate but essential part of winning the Cold War. They claim that in a struggle against a ruthless and expansionist Soviet empire, America had to be willing to fight fire with fire. In their view, the world was a dangerous place, and idealistic notions of democracy and human rights had to take a back seat to the pragmatic need to contain communism. They might argue that coups in places like Iran, while unfortunate, prevented those countries from falling into the Soviet orbit, which would have been a far worse outcome for global stability and American security. However, this argument crumbles under the weight of evidence. The threat of communism was often wildly exaggerated to justify actions that served economic or political interests. Leaders like Mossadegh in Iran and Arbenz in Guatemala were not Soviet puppets. They were nationalists trying to improve the lives of their people. The United States did not overthrow them to save them from communism, but to protect corporate profits and maintain geopolitical control. In the process, America betrayed its own democratic ideals, replacing popularly supported governments with brutal dictatorships and creating deep-seated resentment that still poisons international relations today. This history of lies and secret violence has left deep scars, not just abroad, but also at home. For decades, American presidents and intelligence officials lied to the public, to Congress, and to the world. They created a vast gap between the nation's professed values and its actual conduct. This erosion of trust is a core part of the legacy of the Cold War. When citizens cannot believe what their leaders are telling them about matters of war and peace, the very foundation of democracy begins to crack. The secrecy that was supposed to protect the nation ended up undermining its most essential principles of transparency and accountability. Ultimately, the dark secrets of the Cold War force us to ask fundamental questions. Can a democracy truly remain a democracy when it engages in secret wars, assassinations, and torture? Who has the right to decide when it is acceptable to break the law or betray the nation's values in the name of security? The Cold War may be over, but the vast intelligence apparatus it created remains, and the temptation to use secrecy as a weapon is stronger than ever. The legacy of these covert operations is a legacy of ashes, a history of failed plots and disastrous blowback that serves as a powerful warning about the profound dangers of unaccountable power and the corrosive nature of official lies.